Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie. And in this brief video, I'm going to be looking at the week starting on Monday, October the 13th, 2025. And this video will start with a preview of the main astrological events taking place this week. And then I will do an I Ching reading for the week. And this reading will have 4 sections. Firstly, a general section, then money, then career and business, and finally relationships. So let's start by looking at the week. So here is the chart for the beginning of the week set for New York at midnight on Monday, October the 13th. So you will see that at the beginning of the week, right at the beginning of a week, Venus is at 29 degrees 6 Virgo, something like that. And, this is a reminder that Venus is about to move into Libra. By the way, don't forget to like and subscribe to this video and to this channel if appropriate. So as far as Venus is concerned, it's getting ready to move into Libra. And so Monday or Tuesday, depending on your time zone, we do get this sign change. And I think it's quite a big sign change because, Venus in late Virgo is really under quite a lot of pressure. It is opposition Saturn, and it's in Virgo, the sign of its fall. And then it changes sign. It moves into Libra. Everything changes. It moves into a sign which it rules. So Venus's condition is going to, suddenly improve in a big way. And this might mean that relationships improve. People have a more constructive attitude to money. There is something very transactional about Venus opposition Saturn. Venus in Virgo opposition Saturn in Pisces. People are just thinking about how they're going to benefit, getting perhaps overly focused on material details. But with the Venus moving into Libra, maybe some people are going to be more reasonable. And also at the beginning of a week, we have Venus making a semi-square to Mars. And likewise, this is an important aspect. So, when Venus moves into Libra, it's on the Aries point. And Mars is at 14-15 Scorpio. So at 15 Scorpio, Mars is on the Aries point. Or rather, Mars is sesquiquadrate the Aries point. So Venus semi-square Mars, these are the two planets of perhaps sort of male and female sexuality. That's one way of looking at it. Venus is a planet that likes to create connections. Mars is more about creating division. And so with Venus-Mars semi-square, there could be a clash of some kind. People want to get together. There is perhaps a compulsion there, but it's uneasy, this Venus-Mars semi-square. And the fact that the Aries point, is very much tied up with it. I mean, not really just the Aries point. It's also Neptune. Neptune at 0 degrees Aries. So, Venus starting to make an opposition to Neptune, Mars making a sesquiquadrate to Neptune. There is a lot of action there, and perhaps people realize how much they dislike each other. But at the same time, there is a strange compulsion. It might also say something about what's happening on this planet and the way people's, countries, nations get on with each other. So the week starts potentially on quite a dramatic note. And then there's Pluto. Pluto is going stationary retrograde. So, right at the beginning of a week, you can see that Pluto's got an R next to it, showing that it's going retrograde, but it's coming to a standstill. And so it comes to a standstill at 1 degree 22 minutes Aquarius. That's as far back as it goes. So Pluto doesn't go back into Capricorn. And so perhaps we are now reminded that Pluto is in Aquarius, and we already know how Pluto in Aquarius is manifesting. I think we're getting a clear picture. You're seeing, on one hand, governments really trying to assert their control, and it doesn't matter about sort of where you are. You can see government overreach, and you think about it from a perspective of, say, America, United States, or Germany, the UK, France, wherever. I know that in the United States, for example, people are very a lot of people, particularly on the progressive left, are uncomfortable with the way ICE are behaving. Rounding people up and carting them away in vans, and being really apparently unprofessional about it. At least that's the impression I get. But then on the other hand, in Britain, people are getting long prison sentences, not longish prison sentences, for just tweeting the wrong thing. Getting maybe a few years in prison. In Germany, you've got candidates for not being allowed to stand for office because of their politics. And so it's happening all around the world, and a lot of people are complaining about, for example, I'm in America, so I get perhaps the progressive view on this. A lot of people are progressives complaining about how bad things are in America, how totalitarian things are, but where are you going to go? It seems to be a common feature. Sometimes that oppressiveness comes from the left, sometimes it comes from the right. It's just part of what we're living in with this Pluto in Aquarius. And at the same time, there are a lot of people unhappy about it. There are people wanting to rebel. In the UK, Keir Starmer was talking about digital IDs. That's very Pluto in Aquarius. But then on the other hand, there are people saying they will not ever carry a digital ID. They'd rather go to prison. So people are feeling rebellious in the face of growing totalitarianism, and maybe Pluto going stationary direct is to an extent going to reinforce that. And then also at the beginning of a week, we've got Mars making a sesquiquadrate to Neptune. So it's it's all happening. And then later in the week, there's still some action, but I would have said that the beginning of the week, astrologically, is probably where the action is happening. Then later on, we've got what have we got? We've got Venus quintile Jupiter, and that's a sort of more minor aspect, but Venus is 72 degrees from Jupiter, so that's 1/5 of the circle. So when you think about Venus quintile Jupiter, you think about what we're trying to create. And Venus and Jupiter are quite positive planets. They're the greater benefic. Well, you've got Jupiter is the greater benefic, Venus is the lesser benefic. They're in quintile, and so some of us are trying our very hardest to make things look good. We're trying to be optimistic, and it doesn't matter how difficult things are. We are seeing what we can do to make things look good. Maybe things aren't so bad, and perhaps with a conscious effort we can turn things round. But still, some discipline is going to be required, and I think that the last major aspect of the week is Sun quincunx Saturn. So the Sun is in Libra, and it's making an 150-degree aspect to Saturn. So we might see this in terms of integration, what we are trying to bring into play. So the Sun in Libra, of course, tries to be reasonable, and it can also be about our selfhood. And there's something bothering us. It's that Saturn in Pisces. And so what do we need to do? Perhaps we have to be a little more organized, or maybe there's something we're afraid of, and we think we're afraid of it, but we have to make it part of ourselves. And if we're open about our fears, but we don't sort of run away from them, maybe we can find, some kind of sort of integrity. But I'll be talking about this Sun Quincunx Saturn, in about a week's time, when I do the readings for next weekend. So, that's the astrology. I think the focus is very much at the beginning of a week. I don't think that there's so much going on, after sort of, Tuesday. So maybe it's going to be a quieter week, but it often doesn't turn out like that. So now I'm just going to turn to the I Ching. So remember that this I Ching reading is only for those who want to watch it, who want to be part of it. If you don't want me to do your I Ching, you can just stop watching the video now. It only applies to those watching the I Ching section of this video. And my I Ching reading is divided into 4 parts. Got a general section, then money, then career and business, and finally relationships. So I asked the question, what is the week starting on Monday, October the 13th, 2025 going to be like for those watching the I Ching section of this video? And the first hexagram I got was hexagram number 35, which is progress. So I'm going to begin by looking at the reading in a general sense. So 35 progress, as its name implies, it's a pretty good hexagram. It suggests that we can make solid progress. It's not necessarily about reaching a destination, but it's about moving towards our destination. Whatever we need, we can perhaps get hold of it. And it talks about getting an interview 3 times or getting an audience 3 times. So that indicates that there is a degree of support, and at the same time, we can be recognized. So that's looking pretty good. So, this week, do think about what is it that you're, trying to achieve. What are you trying to get together? Don't expect anything dramatic to be taking place, but certainly you can move from, whatever, from step 1 to step 2. You're certainly moving in the right direction. Now, we do have 2 moving lines. The 5th line moves, and so does the 6th. And the 5th line moving, well, the 5th line is usually quite a fortunate line, and it indicates that we don't have to be in a rush. We just need integrity, and that's what really matters. And we can be patient, and I think that our patience will be rewarded, and we just have to be true to ourselves. And if we're true to ourselves, then things will just move our way in a very natural way. And at the same time, we're going to get appreciated and supported, and it's not a big deal. We don't have to shout, we don't have to boast, we don't have to be pushy, and it's quite possibly best that we leave it like that. We don't want to take things too far too quickly, but we might, because the top line moves, and the top line does talk about intense progress. It talks about progress with horns. It's like the bull lowering its head, waiting to charge. And what it's saying is that, we can make progress, but if we start to be assertive, that means we're assuming a conflict. And the question is, do we want to get involved in a conflict? It just might be too much trouble. We are, why would we want to go onto the defensive? It just may not be necessary, but it depends on the situation. If you feel that something needs to be attacked, when I say attack, I don't mean literally attacked. When you feel that a confrontation is needed, yes, you can make progress. But, it's the kind of progress that is not necessarily pleasant, because there are winners and losers. I mean, sure, we can be the winner, but do we want to deal with the after effects? So the question is, do we want to take progress to the final stage? Do we want to take it to the final degree where real action, assertive action is necessary, where people might get upset, might get annoyed? Yeah, we can win, but what is the price? So got these two moving lines. Now that does mean that we move to a second hexagram, and the hexagram we move to is hexagram number 45, which is gathering together. And this might suggest that we don't necessarily need to do things on our own. And sort of looking back to the previous hexagram, perhaps the reason we might have felt that we had to be so assertive was because it was us, just one person, us against the rest of the world, and we had to do what was necessary. But maybe there are other ways of doing it, and gathering together perhaps indicates that through our example, not through our angry assertiveness, we can bring people around us, we can get people to listen to us, and maybe we can show some gentle leadership, gathering together. Who are people gathering around? Maybe they're gathering around us. So, don't ignore the social dimension. And it just may be that if you feel at all frustrated, and if you feel that sort of assertion is necessary, maybe you don't really have to take things too far. And with the right help, you can get what you want in a sort of a fairly organic way. And then there is money. So from a financial perspective, I think that things look pretty good. Certainly they seem to be stable. And so, we may come into this week with all sorts of thoughts about money. Depends on our circumstances, depends on what we're looking for. But whatever we're trying to get, we can make progress. We can set for ourselves particular financial goals, trying to understand something of a financial nature, perhaps trying to get hold of some money. And it's not that we're necessarily going to get that money this week, but we can make good progress. And so if you feel hard done by financially, don't worry about it too much. And with the fifth line moving, it's very important not to be too impatient. To give. You don't want to give the impression that you're desperate for money, that you've got to get it. You've got to get that sum of money right now. And because if you do, that's not the right approach. A degree of sort of subtlety is required, and you've got to give the impression that you're not obsessed about money. Yeah, privately you might be obsessed about money. You may really want to get hold of whatever it is you're looking for. But if you give the impression of being too concerned, then that might put people off. And just, be authentic and, think beyond the money and think about what is right and what is fair. And that's the best approach. But, what if you're desperate for money? Maybe you regard there's a situation where, you have been treated badly and money is owed to you and you want it now. Well, then you move into the sixth line. And the sixth line, I perhaps one would regard the sixth line as being optional. That is the top line. You don't have to go down that road. But if the sixth line does indicate that if need be, you can show real force. You can perhaps be quite rude about it, and you can say, I want this money. This is unreasonable. I need that money now. Stop holding back. So you can almost demand money, and be aggressive about it, because the sixth line, the I Ching talks about with horns, putting your head down, bull-like, showing that you mean business, showing you're about to charge, and people will probably just get out of your way and just give you the money. But is that really what you want? Because you might be just creating a bad impression. So don't be in too much of a hurry to get hold of money, even if it really is owed to you. And then we've got movement. So we move to a different hexagram, and we move to hexagram number 45, which is gathering together. And this says something rather different. Maybe something needs to be discussed, something needs to be negotiated, and it's not about right and wrong, and you need to perhaps discuss your financial needs, let other people discuss their financial needs, talk about money with other people, and that might be the best way of resolving the issue, whatever that issue might be. And then there is career and business, and I think that this looks pretty good. I don't know what your situation is, whether you have a job, whether you're looking for a job, whether you've got your own business, whatever the situation is, I think that you can make good progress. And I'm not saying that you're going to achieve everything. You're going to achieve all your ambitions this week. It's not quite like that. But you're going to take some steps forward, moving towards whatever it is that you want. And you can do this in a way that shows your integrity. It shows that you are someone who is there to be trusted and respected, to be reliable. And, you don't want to show yourself to be in too much of a hurry in most cases. Just accept that, sometimes things do take their time. And, sure, we want instant results. We want to really get what we want as soon as possible, but that's just probably not the right approach. And you need to sort of gently move towards the achievement of your goals. And remember, this hexagram progress talks about an audience, getting 3 audiences. So if you are looking for a job or looking for an interview, then maybe this week is going to be your week. Now, I know that in areas there, unemployment is high. That people, you hear stories about people, sending off hundreds of applications and they just get ignored, or the supposed employer is just trying to get data on new clients. Maybe that's a particular problem for younger job applicants. I know that a lot of graduates or new graduates are complaining about this. They apply for lots of jobs and the job ads are not serious. They're not actually trying to hire anyone. They're just trying to get data on the qualifications of people entering the workforce. So I don't want to create false hope here, because it is a delicate issue. But if I just follow what the I Ching says, there seems to be the possibility of getting interviews, even getting 3 interviews. So don't sort of get upset if you don't get the 3 interviews you're looking for. But I'm just saying that maybe there's a way of showing yourself to be the right person, and it's just important to be very authentic, to be patient, not to be in too much of a rush. Don't be too obsessed with getting results. Just be true to yourself and be honest about what you can and cannot do. Maybe that's the right approach. And then the 6th line moves. The 6th line is quite aggressive. It's not just about progress. It's about progress with prejudice. You feel that something is in your way. Something needs to be attacked. Something needs to be confronted. And in the end, if you want to make progress, there could be winners and losers. Someone's going to win, someone's going to lose. And you might not make friends. It just might be a situation where you have to do what you have to do, and it's you that matters. And you have to ask yourself, is it necessary? Maybe it is necessary. Something about your work situation needs to be hammered out, and people need to understand something, and you have to perhaps get involved in a confrontation. Maybe it's a competitive situation. It's either you or someone else. You and someone else, for example, going for the same job, or going for the same position, or whatever it is. So that might end up being the situation. Although there are limits to how much you can achieve just on your own, because with the top two lines moving, we do move to a second hexagram, which is gathering together. And gathering together is about doing things in a team with other people. And so, particularly if you're in a job, don't feel that the whole thing is all about you. If you're with other people and you are authentic and you maintain your integrity, you can really be part of an effective team, and you can gain people's respect. And so in the end, that looks pretty good. So I'm quite optimistic about how things are going to work out for you as far as career and business are concerned this week. And finally, there is relationships. And relationships, progress. Whatever relationships you're involved in or you want to get involved in, then you can indeed get somewhere with them. You can make your feelings clear. You can get on with people. And, certain relationships can certainly develop. And, if you are trying to develop a relationship, it's not about playing games. It's not about trying to show, how wonderful you are. It's really about just being yourself, and not trying to hide who you are. Perhaps not even trying to hide your faults. And I think that honesty will certainly be respected. And if you show yourself to be honest, then it's very likely that the other person will reciprocate. And it doesn't matter what the relationship is about, whether it's about a partnership, whether it's about business, whether it's about romance, whatever it is, just by being down to earth, that's the best way of moving forward. And then the question is, how much of a hurry are you? It's important not to be in a hurry. I mean, this is all about making progress. It's not about sealing any deal, getting super close to anyone, creating commitments. That's not what it should be about. And you have to perhaps take the view that there reaches a point where you've done your best, when it's working to some extent with another person, but you don't want it to go too far. If you take things too far, if you're in too much of a rush, if you're in too much of a hurry, then you could overdo it. And, if you overplay your hand, or perhaps it's also a question of, what happens if you find out that there is an aspect of another person's personality that you don't like, or something they say upsets you, or you disagree with them. Do you want to pursue it any further? You could pursue it further, perhaps because you want to see where this relationship is really going to end up. You want to test this. You might want to almost test a relationship to the breaking point. Sometimes that might be necessary. You want to stress test a relationship, because if a relationship is going to be, in the end, too stressful, you don't want to be involved in that relationship anyway. So you might as well test it to breaking point. So there may be that temptation, and then we get movement. This moves to a different hexagram, and the hexagram it moves to is gathering together. And from a relationship perspective, this talks about people coming together, and maybe people coming together is the key to finding the right relationship, because gathering together suggests not just gathering together with another person, it just suggests gathering together with a group of people, or people coming together. And I suppose if people come together, That means you get an opportunity to meet new people and maybe to find the right person. So I think from a relationship perspective, this week probably looks pretty good. But it's just important not to be in too much of a rush, unless, as I've said, you want to push things to the limit. You feel you want to find out, you want to stress test a relationship. I mean, that sounds a bit extreme, but maybe in certain situations that is the right thing to do. So that's it. That's all I've got to say about this week. As far as the astrology is concerned, I'll be going into much greater detail about the aspects I've been talking about in this video when I do my daily horoscopes. So thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, I'd be very grateful if you were to like it. If you're not subscribed, super grateful if you were to subscribe. If you want to buy me a coffee, there's a link in the description, and I will talk to you again very soon.